Hey, this is Austin Harman Mixes, and welcome to my Fundamentals of Audio series. Today, we're going to be talking about microphones. So, let's get right into it. Microphones are the most essential tool in the audio engineer's arsenal, with the exception of the audio console itself. There are many different kinds of microphones, nuances with how we use them, and kind of rules of thumb to think about when thinking about microphones. Now, before we get into all of this, I just want to let you know that if you missed the beginning of the Fundamentals of Audio series, please do go back and watch that because there's a lot of important context up to this point in this series that you'll want to make sure that you get. But without further ado, let's talk about microphones. First and foremost, you see on the screen, I have a microphone that I'm speaking into. That microphone is simply a diaphragm that is actuated back and forth by the air from my voice, and that actuation is translated via a series of electromagnets into electrical signals that are subsequently processed by the audio console. That mechanical movement captured by the microphone, it has largely been unchanged for 200 years. And it's very shocking how basic and simple a microphone is, but how important it is to music. Now, the rules of thumb behind microphones are simple. There are two major kinds of microphones and then a bunch of kind of specialty microphones we'll kind of briefly touch on. The main core kinds of microphones break down into two categories: condenser microphones and dynamic microphones. Now, the difference between the two is very simple. The dynamic microphone, like this one I have here, is just a diaphragm that's moved back and forth naturally by the air. A condenser microphone, on the other hand, applies an electrical charge to that diaphragm. The diaphragm is made of a different material, and because of that electrical charge, the microphone is significantly more sensitive to the vibrations of the air and the air being moved past the diaphragm. Because of that sensitivity, condenser microphones have a significantly more accuracy than a dynamic microphone. But that comes at the cost of being fragile. Most condenser microphones cannot withstand things like drops very easily. Dynamic microphones are rugged. They can be thrown around. They can withstand a tour. They can withstand a lot of abuse because the mechanics of the dynamic microphone are very simple. Now, the operation of the two microphones also have a distinct difference for audio engineers. Dynamic microphones require no additional thought process whenever it comes to connecting your microphone to the system. However, condenser microphones do. Whenever you connect a condenser microphone to your audio console, you need to enable a separate functionality which we refer to as phantom power, or 48 volt. Now, depending on the make and model of your audio console, in the digital world, this is typically found in what we call the preamp section. And in the analog world, there's a row of red buttons typically found across the top of your analog console. And if you hit that button, it will apply voltage back through the cable to that microphone to power the diaphragm. Now, those are the two major categories of microphones. Now, as we kind of move down into the next layer of categorization, you have all kinds of different use cases, niches, and microphones to deal with. Everything from wireless microphones to wired microphones like this one, shotgun microphones, which have specialty use cases, ribbon microphones, omnidirectional microphones, supercardioid microphones, hypercardioid microphones. It becomes subsequently a little overwhelming to kind of suss out what microphones to use for which case. Let me give you some professional advice on the microphone front. First and foremost, the microphone you use does matter. You might see people out there saying, whatever, if you could just EQ it, process it correctly, the microphone you use doesn't matter. That's crap. The microphone you use for the situation does matter. In fact, it matters so much that the individual nuances between microphones are important such that professional audio engineers actually recognize the sound of different microphones on the same source. Let me give you a couple of examples and explain why this is the case. This microphone that I have here is an AKG P120, a relatively cheap dynamic microphone. It sounds pretty good. Now, the reason why I selected this microphone is the microphone itself has a desirable pickup pattern. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm going to put a frequency graph up on the screen so you can understand what I'm talking about here. As you look at the frequency graph, at the very top of the frequency graph, you can see 20,000 hertz. And at the very bottom of that frequency graph, you can see 20 hertz. Now, if you'd like an in-depth conversation about frequency, I did a video on that in the Fundamentals of Audio series. There'll be a link in the description below that you can go check that out. Now, this microphone, the actual way that the microphone picks up across the frequency spectrum is shown here on screen. You can see the individual nuances of where this microphone has different peaks and valleys of where it picks up more and a little bit less. I chose this microphone because in my professional opinion, I felt like it had the best characteristics aligned to my specific voice and therefore would require minimum processing. Now, why would I do that? Okay, this is going to become a fundamental part of your philosophy as an audio engineer, and it should be. But the point of selecting the correct microphone is that you need to get it right at the source. Okay, the microphone is the source. Getting it right at the source will save you a significant amount of time, headache, and nuance as you try to get a perfected sound. Most professional audio engineers won't even bother to try and fix something at the desk if it's wrong at the mic. And the reason for that is simple. A bad sound at the mic is going to be a bad sound at the stereo. Simple as that. That applies in both the recording, that applies in the live environment as well. Selecting the right mic for the situation requires experience, it requires trial and error, and it also requires taking risk. Sometimes you have to branch out and try a new microphone for a situation to see how well it works. Over the years, I've been famous for trying all kinds of different microphones in various ways to get really interesting results in various situations. Now, a couple of other things to note about microphones whenever it comes to selection. You have large diaphragm microphones, medium diaphragm microphones, small diaphragm microphones. Most commonly, a medium diaphragm microphone is going to be a dynamic microphone. Remember, the non-powered microphone. A large diaphragm or small diaphragm is typically associated with a condenser microphone. It's not always that way, but typically that's what you'll find. A large diaphragm microphone has a much bigger pickup radius, and therefore it is exceptionally gifted at picking up low frequencies, at the cost of being ultra sensitive in the high-end frequencies. You'll find that most vocals for studio records are recorded on a large diaphragm condenser microphone because those microphones are capable of capturing the richness of a vocal and all of its nuances. Now, on contrast to that, you have a small diaphragm condenser microphone. Those microphones are also sometimes referred to as pencil condensers because they're very small and typically cylinder in nature. Those microphones are exceptionally good at picking up things like choir, cymbals, woodwind instruments, and so on. Because of their pickup patterns, they have very specific use cases that allow them to be exceptional in those areas. Now, choosing the right microphone for the situation is an experience thing. Feel free to do research to get other audio engineers' recommendations, but ultimately, you need to try for yourself and decide for yourself which microphone is good and which microphone is bad. Now, I'm going to make a controversial statement here, but you might ask, Austin, what's your opinion on the best vocal mic out there? And I will tell you straight up, the SE7 is not a good vocal mic. Do not use that mic. The best vocal mic out there still to this day is the Shure SM58. Let's argue about it in the comments, but hands down, that microphone still remains the best vocal mic for most applications, specifically in the live environment. This has been the introduction to microphones. We're going to cover a couple of other aspects of microphones, such as the proximity effect and so on, in a different video. I hope that you'll like and subscribe so that we can cover those topics in the next video. God bless you. We'll see you next time.